All right, so we've been doing this as our very first Unspam, and it's because I am a total data geek and I love spreadsheets, and the world I actually got started in wasn't in email, I'm sorry, but most like you, we didn't think that email was gonna be our calling, right? You were probably like, I'm gonna be a professional sports player. Do you see how I said sports player? Because I am not sport athletic at all, so that's what I do. But so we've been keeping track of how the industry's just kind of ebbed and flowed throughout the years. And now that we have a lot of data, we can kind of like start tracking some cool things that are going on. And so we present this every year on what's it like to be in the industry and what you should expect, over the next couple of months, because AI is going to take us over and we're all going to be losing our jobs. Just kidding. We already talked about how that's not going to happen. Just a little background. Email's for everybody, not just the enterprise folk. And as you start seeing a lot of these industry trends on LinkedIn or from Gartner with all the circles and stuff, you'll see that most of these people are talking to the mega huge companies, right? And they're like, oh, this is what's going to mean for, blah, 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 company in San Francisco. We have a very broad reach for really good emails because we have millions of people coming to the site. And so we can really tap into the smallest companies to the largest companies to give you like a whole thing there. We're not biased. So if you use you're like, hey, we sent out a survey to all of our users. And then we got that survey back. So then they post that like, this is how the industry's going. But really, this is how it's going for that segment. So this is all industries. We also ask questions that they don't because they don't want to look like they have their pants down when they ask those kind of questions. Or they omit them from when they publish. And it's a year-to-year comparison. Here's a 24. This is what's happening this year. Anyone trying to buy a house right now? Yeah, that's first-time home buyers. I feel so bad for you all. This is not a great time. It's an election year, too. I don't know if you feel some of the pressure talking just like to your neighbor or just like the random person in the grocery store. That's fun. We also can't afford lunch anymore, so that's great. We don't have any more Ted Lasso. It's all done. I know, that's sad. On to the survey. This is how within 2 weeks, we put it up on the website. Did anyone take this survey in December that you remember? Did we send out? Thank you so much. Thank you. Hopefully you don't want any money in return. It took 14 minutes to complete. And to me, that means that we still have a lot too much time on our hands. Because you're like, I should be working, but I'm just going to be taking the survey instead. That also means to me that there's love, that you actually went through all the questions. Or that I just need to cut down all the questions I ask. One of the two, I don't know. These are you, right? So hey, stock imagery, here we go. This is one of the best sweaters in the world. Part-time versus full-time. So you can see the trend here that from when we started taking the data, 37% were full-time, and now almost half of us are full-time. So before it was jack of all trades, I'm a designer, and I'm creating our products and everything else, and I'm also sending the emails, or I own this pizza joint and I have to do that too. And now there's more devoted, half of us, a 20% increase. That's pretty awesome, right? People are seeing our value. This is great. And as we compare from 2018 to 2024, you can see that the average of us, I don't know if necessarily in the room, none of you are 5.5 years old, but the average has been in 5.5 years in the industry at least. And what we see here is kind of interesting because you have kind of this big group of 1, 2, and 3 with blue. So sometime in 2018 is when we had a huge surge of new people coming in, and we're now starting to age out of the system. Or you're staying in. So 10% increase, and the biggest fallouts were in the early years there. But if you can make it past 3 to 4 years, that's when you've earned your stripes, and you're like, well, I guess I'm stuck. Why I love this is because when I started email, I was like, yeah, we can do this. And so some background is we own an e-commerce company for skincare. We're a skincare retailer, and we started making a lot of money through our emails. And I was the only person doing it. And we had our own servers, and that sucked, and it took us 2 days to send to our whole list because over 200,000 people in 2009. And we started making millions of dollars off of our emails. And so they said, hey, Mike, you're the email guy. And I was like, great, that's awesome. But then as time went on, it was just you're only the email guy. And I was like, I don't know if I don't want to be only. Anyone here want to be something else? You want to be maybe a CMO one day, right? So to me, this feels like that. You've got enough there that you can go train and kind of grow up in your your marketing evolution to become a director. It demands more than it used to. And again, all these are hypotheses because I don't have a crystal ball. Although we do have some cool stickers with crystal balls, so if you can pick one of those up, that'd be great. The roles. This is how it's breaking up right now. When we started, the biggest gains have been project managers, so the people are just taking on a lot more. Biggest losses are people that have been, so we're getting more dedicated into our actual roles. Although multiple still comes the most, it's over half, 58%. You'll see how things have ebbed and flowed. When we started, we thought Real Good Emails was only gonna be for designers. That's all. We're like, who would come? If you're not a designer, why would you even look at that site? Actually, it's kind of been down here at 10%, and the fastest is our writers, our copywriters, our authors. People are creating newsletters. Actually, newsletter is the highest searched category almost every single month. A lot of things going in there. So that's probably higher up next. My guess is there's a need, and it's growing so fast. So we're becoming more specialized, and are we dedicating less to original copy, maybe? So some ideas here are that there's AI is there, and so can we just throw what we've had or steal something from somebody else? It's kind of scary. All right, team size. I'm not gonna call you a loner, but team of one? Oh, wow, way more than I expected. Okay, you are in this 22% group here. But one day you might find a friend and be part of this 44%. This is where a lot of people tend to go. This solo has continued to drop since 2018. It's dropped 20%. So my guess is as email starts catching on, you are going to get more friends. And if you look at team size versus list size, again, this is really kind of a weird graph. But this big blue, see how that's kind of going down, and the blue is going down, and the yellow is kind of going down. So what this shows is for the smallest solo teams, as the bigger your list gets, the less likely you are just running solo, and the more likely you have a huge team, right? Because you're like, oh, if I have 7 million people on my list, most likely I'm working at a bigger company that's going to dedicate more to that team. So if you want to work with other people, you can just say, see ya, boss, and I'm going to go work for somebody else. Or you can grow your list size and grow your revenues, and then you have justification to hire more people. Did anyone change jobs in the last year? Quite a few. Okay, so looks like when we did this over COVID, it was like huge spike. Everyone was like, I'm out of here, suckers. And now it's like, half of us have stayed at our jobs. We went and leveraged the tech boom, and we said, hey, I need $75,000 more a year, and now I'm going to drive a Tesla. Nobody else did that. Okay. 21 of you got promoted, so congratulations. That's so fun. Yay! And 4% of you just left and said, screw you, boss, I'm going to go freelance. So that's cool, too. Any freelance? We have freelancers in here, quite a few. Welcome, welcome. For the next 5 years, this is kind of the more crystal ball looking stuff. This has temporarily grown from where you want to be. So email plus more means you're content, but you also want a little bit more. Whereas, you're staying to learn new skills. Maybe that's 13% there. Or if you just want to bounce out, that's 10%. But this email management, 62%. It's the highest we've ever seen in a year we've done it. So this is, with all the stuff that's going on with AI and technology and software and funding and all that kind of stuff, it's really proving that instead of jumping out of email and trying to just go to like social media or digital marketing or something else, or just go into a different industry, this is a really high confidence level, more than we've ever seen. And that's great, because that means people are going to be, this group right here, this inside group where we have all these inside jokes, might be coming back next year, right? So that's fun. The forecast, this is a little strange. So this is as your subscribers grows. How do you feel about the industry, or how do you feel about the next few years? You can kind of see there's like this trough of sorrows right here, which is like, hey, we reached 100,000. And usually you're like, great, yeah, boss, high fives. But for some reason they're like, oh shit, this is gonna be a lot of work. And then when you get to 1 million, you're like, yeah, we're at 1 million, sweet. So like, if you're in this level, just stay in there. You're good, you can make it. Yeah, so mid-sized companies may have better outcomes, hopefully, because you're maybe a little bit stronger there. So biggest pain points, I love the cutout here, where organizing your assets is 29%. every year after year after year, this is always the number one thing that people hate is, do I have the graphics on time? Is copywriting in the right document? They didn't put it in the Dropbox folder. They didn't get approval from the manager, or they did get the approval and then they sent it and the manager got pissed that he actually gave the approval. That kind of stuff, right? That's every year, that's number one. Can somebody please create technology that helps this? That'd be great. New ideas, this is where you're fighting, and we've kind of Robin talked about how do you talk to your teams and come out with some, get to conclusions and give some space. Dynamic content is a problem. It's like, how do I use the language of HTML to insert dynamic variables? Campaign calendar stuff, cutting through opinions, less than 10%. Coding issues, less than 5%. This is great. When we started Outlook, whoo, that was, wait, it's still bad. Yeah. But it hasn't really changed from the last year. So that's interesting. So that's going to just show you from year to year, 2024 to 2022. Everything's about the same. The struggle's real, guys, and nothing makes it better. So, talking about where people work. When we started, it was all about open rates. It was like, yeah, open rates are the best. And then eventually they're like, yeah, open rates aren't that great. And so you can see open rates here have declined every single year, which is a good indicator that we are not judging how an email performs based off somebody opened it or a robot opened it. What we're judging is off of click-through rates. Big jump this last year in companies that are dedicated, that's their metric that they look at. The problem is, if you work in like B2B SaaS companies, you'll see if you're sending through like a Salesforce or something to another B2B, there are a lot of big corporations that automatically click on links to check if they're fraudulent or whatever. So now there's click fraud, and not in the fraud, but like a lot of metrics there that I not necessarily are happy about if people are using that as a metric. I like this up the top where it's generated per open. So people have opened it and then they made money off of it, generated per user, subscriber, per click. To me, that feels like more of a place that's going to grow. So open rates are going to decline. People are going to start looking at money or lifetime value of a subscriber. We've talked about that this the last couple of days. Also, subscribe rates. That's a bigger jump as a term of a percentage, but still pretty small. Unsubscribe. Please keep an eye on your unsubscribes. That's a big one that'll hurt you over time. Looking more at money, less at clicks. So we're doing great. All right, time to complete an email. So in 2018, it took about 5.5 business days to complete one email. Ooh, that was a hard day. I'm sorry. Hard week, if you will. But for some reason, you'd think with all the technology going on, it would get easier, and yet we are spending almost 2 extra days. That's like, thought about like if you go to your boss and say, can I get some extra help? So that's about an extra day per campaign when we did the analysis. So everything that's going on is a lot. Efficiencies all decrease then. And then one at a time. So the number of emails that you're working on right now at this moment. 2018, 3.8. And right now we're at 4.5. So it's 5 increase. So it's not much more. If you look at the data back to back, you're like, it's taking me 2 extra days and I really have the same amount in my flow. So what's happening here? I don't have the answer, guys. Don't look at me for the answer. You're like, what is happening? I don't know. This is what the data shows. So this goes back to your project management tools. This goes back to your writers. This goes back to your org flows. You should go figure this out with your team. And I would love to go back and go look at like Monday.com or Trello and just see how many projects you've been working on right now versus how many projects you've been working on 6 months ago versus last year, and how long it took to complete those projects, and have an idea of how to expedite that process and make it simpler or better so that you have some more efficiency there. So if you did all the costs in 2024, so average time to create 100 day and a half with the average load of 0.2 email, you'd have an extra 3.3 extra hours to produce it, produce an email, which equals about 17 extra days per year. That's pretty much like how many like PTO days you get, right? You're spending that on making emails. So if you're a boss in this room, you might want to be like, hey, how do we cut down the production time? Because we're adding more days just to give the same output than we were 4 years ago or 8 years ago. And then if you're based on your list size, do you get like more efficient the bigger you get? Or if you're doing a solo or a small team? And you can see that in 2024, down here at the very bottom is the small teams, and they are taking more days now. The trend has gone up every couple of years, whereas that's the same case for everybody except for that 500 to 750,000. So in these area, 250 to 750, you have that trough of sorrows here. So maybe you're just like, screw it, I'm not doing an email. I don't know. You're like, I'm taking the day off and I'm gonna send it out. Or you figured it out, or there's less there. Again, email's not just hard, it's just even more hard. Well, the conclusion I have on this data. Bigger list equals bigger companies, which equal more red tape. I'm sorry if you work in a big company, but you do have friends, hopefully. Other people that take the blame. I can't wait to throw that one on Be Free one day where I'm like, that wasn't me, it was somebody else in the marketing team. All right, the tools. Distributed company size, so big, small, medium. This is essentially, are you working in a big company, a medium company, a small company? So pretty even, 33, about a third for each of you in this room. So Klaviyo users in the room, a big jump from 2022. MailChimp decreased from 2022. They're losing market share. And HubSpot is about the same. That's for small companies. For medium companies, Salesforce is still the leader. You come in, you pay lots of money to them, you're locked in forever. Klaviyo's grew 4%. HubSpot also decreased a little bit there. There's some news that Google might buy HubSpot. So you might have Google as your overlords if you're using HubSpot. And then large companies, Salesforce gained in large companies because they have lots of money to spend. Adobe lost some shares, and Braze, this is a huge gain, I think. I think Braze in the large company style are going to kind of explode over the next couple of years. From 2% to 6% in an enterprise level over the course of 2 years is actually a pretty big jump. So they're eating the shares of Adobe and some other large players. So if you're like locked into something right now and you're like, maybe I should go look at something else, that's a good indicator that maybe they have something going on if you're a large company. Movers and shakers. So Klaviyo jumped 240% compared to 2018, and MailChimp has decreased 51%. When I joined, it was MailChimp was everywhere. Like they're at every conference. You couldn't listen to a podcast without hearing a MailChimp ad. They've gone downhill. Medium companies, Klaviyo also is up 100% there. For medium companies, MailChimp's decreased, and for Braze and Oracle. For Oracle's kind of decreased there. So that's kind of sad stuff. Extra toppings. So who supplements? You have your ESP, but you also use like a Nifty Images we heard yesterday, or you've got use Canva, or right, everyone's supplementing. Use really good emails on the side. Of those who supplement, but Iterable is the most. So if you're like going to go sign with a new company, you're like, does it have all the tools I want? This is a good indicator. Like if I buy into that, will I also have to use something else with that? Like will it do what I want to do? Or it means that your company is just so large that you just spend frivolously on any technology you want. And if so, that is great. Good for you. But there wasn't really change from last year to this year. Out of all the scores, so you could give your ESP 6 out of 10. That's not, we were going for 9 out of 10. 4 out of 5 stars is what we learned from Melanie, right? Like 6 out of 10 means there's a good amount of room in this world to increase. So if you're an ESP in the room, let's look at a different North Star metric and go off of that. Highest rated Klaviyo, 78%, 7.8. Braze, 7.7. Cordial, 7.6. The lowest this year was 3.6. Emarsis. If you're on one of those in the bottom, you might want to start looking at others, but you probably already know that because you're not happy. In other words, no matter what's winning, there's still room to go. Last one. This is the heaviness that we're all thinking about. We're all talking about Gen AI. Is it going to come for us? We threw this question in because we weren't talking about this in 2022. Like we were like, that's never coming. And then here we are. So we didn't have a lot of questions on this one, but 78% of survey takers said they aren't using AI, which I found like crazy. I feel like everyone I talk to uses Gemini or ChatGPT or something like that. Maybe people in the room are just a little bit more advanced than the general users of the survey. But if you did, the biggest ones are for copywriting. We're hiring more copywriters, but Gen AI is kind of taking over copywriting. So the question is, are our bosses going to shift to Gen AI writing for us? Or as Jared pointed out this morning, that we can have creativity and show people that we're there. And my guess of what's going to happen here is people are going to they're going to create a collection of really good emails, and they're going to say, I liked all the qualities of this brand, and I want to create a welcome email, and then it will spit out some suggested text, and then they'll kind of tweak how that works for them. And hopefully I'm not giving away too much of a product roadmap of what's going to happen with Be Free, but that's what we see in our vision. personalization is a pain, and I think finding trends within your data samples is also a really good place to look at it. So you can just dump your data into one of these models and say, can you find me any trends with the customer data that we have, or open rates, or correlations between this customer segment and the products they order, or average order size per segment. Like, there's a lot of cool things that I think will happen over the next year. So if you're not using Gen AI to do any of that, that's a place to look at juicing up your email flows. Coding from scratch, I think with no code builders, like, this is probably just going to decrease. Like, coding from scratch is really hard, and hopefully more ESPs get on track where they don't end up like Outlook. Just generating some new campaign ideas, 10%. That's you. That's you in this room. You've got some struggles ahead of you. Hopefully you can see the light at the end of the tunnel. If you stay in there, 4 years at least is when things start getting better. If you have bigger companies, you have more friends, but also you have more red tape. Like, there's trade-offs no matter where you're at. You could have a really cool company, and I think someone talked about this yesterday, that they said, I'm happy with my job, I love my job, I don't get paid that much. Like, just because of one thing where you're at doesn't mean that you can't find solutions elsewhere.